A24's newest big movie, one that's been talked about all year, is The Smashing Machine, starring Dwayne Johnson playing the role of Mark Kerr. This biopic covers the life of Mark the Specimen Kerr, also known as Mark the Smashing Machine Kerr, the world of mixed martial arts at the turn of the century, and the rise and fall and complex life of Mark Kerr during these 3 or 4 years. There's a lot of positive reviews out about this movie, mostly praising Dwayne Johnson's performance as Mark Kerr. I'm going to get to that here in just a moment. This movie was written, directed, produced, and edited by Benny Safdie. Now, when I saw that he was going to be working on this movie and doing all of that for this movie, I felt like it was a good choice, and I felt like the film was in good hands because Benny Safdie is the guy who made Uncut Gems, and that's one of my favorite movies from 2019. If you haven't seen Uncut Gems with Adam Sandler, I would highly recommend checking it out. When it comes to the story of Mark Kerr, this is going to hit different depending on maybe how well you know the story, because a lot of what happened in this movie I was aware of. I know about Mark Kerr. I still have the DVDs of Pride Fighting Championships during those eras. I've done multiple podcasts on Pride going all the way back to like the late 2000s, and I've said before that I love Pride FC. And this was that era where UFC in America was frowned upon. I believe John McCain was trying to shut down UFC, called it human cockfighting. That's what was going on at the time. Meanwhile, in Japan, mixed martial arts was flourishing with Pride Fighting Championships. And this story is about Mark Kerr, not only in the UFC, but then, of course, his life in Pride, where he became a massive star to the Japanese. It may seem on the surface that this is one of those sports drama movies like Creed or, there's so many of them, Raging Bull. This is not really that, although there's elements of that here. It follows the life of Mark Kerr, what it's like to live in an era where, MMA was it wasn't even called MMA. Back then, that term mixed martial arts wasn't even a thing back then. It was called no holds barred for a lot of this time period, and it covers the struggles that Kerr had with substance abuse, drugs, steroids, and issues with his then girlfriend Dawn Staples, played by Emily Blunt. So I'm going to say this about the film. I wasn't going into this expecting it to be 100% accurate. That's not what I was watching this for. I just wanted it to be close enough to the real thing. And based on everything I know, it was close enough to the real thing. Ryan Bader plays Mark Coleman, and the film sort of goes a little bit into Mark Kerr's relationship with Coleman and with Boss Rutan, who plays himself in the film. But it doesn't spend all that much time with it. It was mostly Kerr's relationship with Dawn, and that kind of took the center of the movie. And to be frank with you, that was, to me, maybe the best, or in some ways the only real highlight of the movie. I'm going to get to what I mean by that in just a minute. I want to say that the talk about Rock being up for an Oscar as best male actor or best performer for performance from a man, definitely he did a great job in this film. The two leads, Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, and Emily Blunt, I thought were great. They carried the film through their struggles, through the good, the bad, Mark Kerr's, issues, trying to control his demons, fighting through everything, and then Dawn's demons as well, and how they would clash with each other. That was the big dramatic part of the movie. And while all that's going on, Mark Kerr is training for the 2000 Pride Fighting Championships Grand Prix tournament, which at the time was the biggest tournament in MMA history. And it began a series of tournaments that kind of made Pride, put Pride on the map. Pride was already known, but outside of Japan, this was around 2000s when people started to really learn about Pride as it began to air on pay-per-view. And there were also shows being put out on VHS in America. So Mark Kerr, of course, representing America, going over there. Now, I do want to say that I appreciated how well they got the stuff like the Pride and the UFC, some of the characters that are real fighters like Igor Vovchanchin, Kazuyuki Fujita. I appreciated how close they got to, looks wise, maybe not so much, but I did appreciate the attempt. But I must tell you that if I'm being honest with you, yes, Rock delivers a great performance, but I don't think this movie was all that good. I think they were missing some kind of a spark. I think that the drama that Mark Kerr went through, I think would have been better executed in fiction. This is one of those movies where it's based on a true story. It's inspired by actual events, but I don't think that the Mark Kerr story, even though it's interesting, I don't think his story is really all that. I don't think his story is entirely worthy of making a biopic over. Yes, he was one of the early mixed martial arts, I don't want to say pioneer because that's not really right either, but he was somebody who was there before the rise of the UFC, during some of the dark ages. But the drama in this movie, I think, it works, but to me, it didn't really encapture me. It wasn't like the film. As I was walking out of it, I thought that there were parts of it where the pacing just dies completely. And when you're doing a biopic, see, this is the risk of doing a biopic, is if you try to make things a little too realistic, it kind of cost the entertainment factor of the film. And so the movie in and of itself, I thought was not too great. The Rock's performance and Emily Blunt was great. The music, it wasn't too good at all. They had some Frank Sinatra and stuff like that in there, but I don't think it really hit the world of 1997 to 2000. Also, there were cell phones in this movie that were way too small for that time period. So there were some mistakes that were made as far as remembering that this movie takes place in the late 90s going into 2000. And ultimately, I felt like this movie, I don't think it's worth seeing in theaters. I think if you're a fan of Pride Fighting Championships or UFC or MMA, you're probably going to see it at some point. You probably know the story of Mark Kerr. In some ways, the Smashing Machine documentary that came out, 20 years ago. It was a while ago. It might not be 20. It could be 15. Something like that. It's not a new documentary. Go see that instead. I feel like this movie is better served to be a streaming movie or a movie that you maybe Redbox. I haven't seen a Redbox in a while. Maybe they stopped doing those. But yeah, this is more of a Redbox film. I don't think it's worth seeing in theaters. I went to go see it, excited because I kept hearing all these great things. And yes, The Rock is great in it. Performance-wise, he was phenomenal. Ryan Bader, not a very good Mark Coleman, I would say. I don't think he really captured Mark Coleman, although the part where he's walking backstage, he does walk just like how Mark Coleman walks, but just the facials and the voice isn't really, to me, is not really Mark Coleman. So either way, I think they could have done more with this story, but there are so many other fighters that I think have more interesting stories from that time period. Mirko Krokop, for example, his dad was like a Croatian officer, like a military officer, and there's a whole story about how he dedicated his life to his dad. There's stories to be told. You can tell the story of Kazushi Sakuraba going from professional wrestling to becoming the biggest star in Japanese MMA, feuding with the Gracies. There's a lot of great stories that can be told. Mark Kerr, although in America, I would say he had his, I don't want to say 15 minutes of fame, because when he was famous, UFC was not mainstream whatsoever. It was still sort of an underground thing. Like I said, there's more captivating stories that could be told over this one. But Dwayne's performance was great, no argument there. He really captured the warmth of Mark Kerr and his his demons, and the issues he ran into. I also don't think that they focus on these demons as much as I feel like they should have. I think that there's two scenes in particular where, bad things happen to Mark, like bad things. I'm not going to go into it in case you don't know, but they could have, I think, held on to that a bit more and made like his comeback, his rise from the brink of defeat mean more. But I don't think that they did it all that great. Plus the fights, like the actual fights in the film, I didn't think were all that well done either. They weren't bad, but they were not all that well done. So ultimately, I am a bit disappointed. I won't lie. The movie disappointed me. You might like it more than me. I don't know. It wasn't a bad film, but on a scale of like 1 to 10, it's like a 6.5. I would just wait for streaming. Those are my thoughts. Have a good one. Take care. Let me know what you think about the Smashing Machine. Later.